and you can start whenever you want, because we'll clip.
Hello, I'm Rachel Betzen,
I'm Kate Hardin.
and this is My Smart Kid Doesn't Like to Read. Now what? Okay, so in the beginning, I started working as a speech-language pathologist in 2004. Jamie was one of the very first students that I worked with. His mom brought him in when he was in 2nd grade, and she was in tears. She said, the school told me that my son has mental retardation. And I know it's hard to understand him, and he can't really read, but I know he's smart, so I don't think they're right. So I started working with Jamie. He was the first student that I did reading programs with, integrated into his speech-language therapy. And in 6 months, you were able to understand his words. He had severe apraxia, severe speech disorder. But within 6 months, you could understand him at the word level, and he was reading at middle of a 1st grade level. So this is not a child that had mental retardation. So I worked with Jamie until he was in the 5th grade, till the end of 5th grade. And at that point, he was completely caught up with his speech and language skills for the most part, and in school as well. So we went back to catch up with Jamie last year, and he had just graduated from the Science and Engineering Magnet. And right now he is the first child in his family to go to college. So it's a really big success story for the whole family. And this is a child that we would have just thrown away because he wasn't learning, you couldn't understand him, he couldn't understand the world, and he was angry. And because he was able to get the right kind of intervention, now he's a fully functional member of society. So that's what this is about.
All right, so I know my kid is smart, but why won't they read? So reluctant readers could have difficulty with any number of skills. Some of the skills they could have trouble with are decoding, which is segmenting words, breaking them down into their letter components, and then blending those back together. They also might have trouble with reading fluency, so how fast they can read and how accurate they can read. They could have trouble with spelling, which is being able to put those single letters together to build larger chunks like words or phrases or sentences. And they could have trouble with simple imagery, so having a picture for each of those letters and knowing that that picture matches this sound, and when you put those together, those sounds make a picture of this word. They could have trouble with sight words. So those are words that don't even follow the rules. You just kind of have to learn them by sight. So they need to have a mental picture of what those words look like so that they can learn their sight words and stay on target for their reading goals. And then visual imagery is a mental picture for what's happening in the story. A lot of kids have trouble with this. They just don't see pictures in their head when they're reading. They don't connect. This word looks like this in my head, so if this happens and this happens, this is how my story changes in my head. And visual imagery kind of leads to, or symbol imagery leads to visual imagery. So if you have imagery for your letters and your smaller parts, once you go bigger, that imagery carries over with you. Some kids also have trouble with short attention span and difficulty with divided attention. So divided attention is being able to swap your attention between more than one thing and being able to put something in the back of your mind. A lot of our kids do have difficulty with this because they get hyper-focused on, I want this, or I want that, or it's this story, and they kind of forget to be able to kind of move those things back. It's not super important right now, we need to focus on this. And then having non-reading activity habits during free time. So they go home, they want to go play, and then they want to play video games and watch movies and watch TV, but they're not picking up a book. They're not developing their reading skills like they could be. And some kids only read in school. They may need some help finding some books of interest. And that's where the library comes in, because librarians are great at this. They love to talk to kids. They have an extensive knowledge on all the books or where to find books that would interest your kid, and they can help guide you in the right direction. And it's fun for them, so why not use them?
All right. So when we think about reading and writing, this gets a little bit technical, but just kind of hang in there with us. So when you think about reading and writing, what we really need is a strong foundation that's based on language skills. So when we talk about this with parents, I like to use the analogy of a house. So So you have your foundation. I will go ahead and switch to the house so you can see. So you have your foundation at the bottom, and then it starts very young. So when children are just beginning to communicate, even before words, they have some awareness of themselves and of other people in their environment. And even young children can understand that they are able to change their environment and have their needs met based on their own behavior, crying, trying to communicate, pointing, all of the things that parents pick up on very young. Okay. So once they do that and they intend to understand others, that builds a strong foundation of language comprehension. So we have our speaking and then our listening on the outside parts of our wall here. So speaking and listening skills build on each other. And then in the middle we have reading. So all of this is supporting the child's reading. And then the roof we have up there is the writing skills. So all of the skills need to be in place for writing, which is a more abstract language concept that children have to manipulate. All right, so when we think about how speech-language therapists are connected to reading, so SLPs have a lot of training in the foundational language skills. So this builds a good foundation for us to help us interact with reading and writing with children. Okay, and our American Speech Language Hearing Association, so that's the national association for our field, their scope of practice includes reading and writing. So the scope of practice is the guiding foundation for our profession and what kind of work we do with kids. So it says the practice of speech-language pathology includes comprehension and expression in oral, written, graphic, and manual modalities. So that includes language processing, pre-literacy, and language-based literacy skills, including phonological awareness. So just awareness of sounds starts very young. So this is the foundation for the development of reading and writing.
All right, so here are some components of reading. We've kind of already covered a lot of these when we were talking about where some of our students struggle. But a lot of the areas where they do struggle come back when we get into reading because they do have a hard time with being able to sound out their words, and that affects their reading fluency. And we find that all of these skills kind of build on each other. So if you're having a hard time decoding, you're probably going to have a hard time with your reading fluency because you're not able to sound out the words as quickly. That means you'll probably have trouble with spelling because your sound letter recognition doesn't match up. It also means you may or may not have trouble with symbol imagery. You may not have a picture for the letter L or the letter T. And that's going to make it harder for you to be able to memorize your sight words. And then that develops into being able to have visual imagery throughout a much larger selection of words, a paragraph, a story, a narrative, a novel. It all builds on each other, and these are skills that have to be developed in order to be successful in the academic environment and really throughout our daily lives. You're expected to speak, listen, read, and write on an almost daily basis. So it's really important that we target these areas when we're looking at where our children are struggling. So what's it like to have a speech disorder? See if you can figure out what I'm about to say. Always swallow we Emma. I eat up them. Any ideas? Oh, she's getting close. She's getting close.
Mama. I don't know what that
Aha. So this is what we would see in a kid who has a speech disorder. They leave off consonants, they can have substitutions. What this actually says is, holy strawberries, Batman, are we in a jam?
Right.
So you can see like strawberry got shortened to a W, and that changes the whole way that that first part of that word sounds, which if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know that they were trying to guess, that they were trying to say strawberry. And so when they sound like this, they also write like this. So you'll see in kids who have severe speech disorders, their writing mimics their oral expression, and they will drop consonants. Their vowels may be incorrect. They have a lot of difficulty getting their thoughts from brain to paper. But what's it like to have a language disorder?
Okay, so see if you can figure out this story. The blue and bird flew over lines and landed on a tree. A yell down the street. A woman and her children girl running and yell. The parrot turned to look. They ran and came to halt the tall tree. Pablo, little boy, come down. Yes, please, said the little girl. The parrot finally landed on Mother. Okay, so you can probably have some idea what the story is about, who the characters are, what they're trying to do. But for a child that has a language processing disorder, they're not able to understand the full picture because they can only process part of what we say. Okay, so here's the full story. The blue and yellow bird flew over the power lines and landed on a tall green tree. A yell could be heard from down the street. A woman and her 2 children, a boy and a girl, were running quickly and yelling. The parrot turned his head and seemed to look at them as they ran towards him and came to a halt under the tall green tree. Pablo, the little boy called, come down here. Yes, please come back, pleaded the little girl. The parrot finally flew down and landed on her mother's arm. Okay, so when you have the full story, you have a much more complete picture of what's happening. So it'll be a lot easier for you to answer questions about the content and even write some answers if you are required to do that. Okay, so when we think about therapy with children, and also when we think about reading and writing development, one thing that's very important to consider is the zone of proximal development. So in the very center, we have what the child can do independently, accurately, most of the time. The outside circle is what the child can't do. Even with help, it's just going to be too hard for them. And the middle circle, what I can do with help, this is where we want to focus most of our attention with our kids. So we want to meet them where they are and look at what they can already do and then support them as they're able to do more and more with help. And then that circle will grow and their circle of what I can do will also expand as they go through this process.
So, how can we help? It's good to know what the expectations are for children if we're looking at helping them. So, let's talk about some of the reading expectations that kids are expected to meet. So, in schools, they have specific reading assessments that are done in kindergarten through 3rd grade. They're usually done 3 times a year, and they measure skills looking at beginning pre-reading skills and early reading skills. So those include things like book and print awareness, like do they hold the book the right way? Do they flip the pages the right way? Can they track across left to right? And early reading skills, and then story retell. So if I tell you a short story, can you repeat it right back to me? But at DRLS, we do assessments based on all ages, and we look at not only their reading skills, but their language skills together with their reading and writing skills. So we can get a more in-depth assessment of their language and their reading intricacies and the nuances of both. And we work from pre-reading skills all the way to advanced reading skills, which include skills like analyzing and synthesizing the material. So being able to take larger chunks of material and do something with it. Are you able to write an expository statement on it? Can you answer more in-depth questions, higher level thinking skill questions? Are you able to do something with what you're reading, or is it just in, out, and you're done? So, going from there, we get a lot of questions. Some of the questions we get are, how can I get my child to like books? You can do any number of things. You can talk to your child's teacher and see if there's anything they're reading at school or any interest they've mentioned. Talk to your kid. They know what they like. You can also talk to your librarian. That's why they're here. They love to help children fall in love with reading. That's what they do. And they wouldn't be here if they didn't like doing it, so we should use them because they are a fabulous resource. Parents sometimes ask us, how do I know what books are at their appropriate level? Their child's teacher is going to be a really good judge of that because they do these tests every so often so they can kind of get a rough estimate so they know who needs extra help in the classroom and who is ready to move to the next level. So working closely with your teachers, you can find out roughly where your student is and go from there. Some people like to use the 5-finger rule, whereas you pick a book and you skip to any page. If your child can read the whole page without missing 5 words, one whole hand, then that book is at a good level. But if you get to 5 and you haven't finished the page yet, that book is probably too hard, and you might need to back up a little bit to give them something that's gonna be easier for them to read, keep their fluency up, give them success, and keep them interested. And then, this one's kind of tricky. I never liked reading as a kid either, so how do I get my kid interested? How can I be a good model? Learn to love reading as an adult. It's possible. Your tastes have changed since you were a kid. It's possible you hated reading as a kid because you never found anything you liked, but now you enjoy reading about cooking or leisure activities or something else that's fun. It's never too late to pick up reading. And again, your librarian can be really helpful in helping you find your interests as an adult as well. And just let them see you read and not get bent out of shape about it. Like, it's not a big chore to read. It's something that can be done, that can be fun, that can be a great way to pass time. So here's some of the reasons we hear that children don't like to read. It's boring. It's hard. I don't understand what I'm supposed to be doing. You told me I had to do this. And there aren't any pictures in this book. And so what that could mean is that they may not see pictures in their head when they're reading. So they could read the word book, but not picture a book. Or they could picture something that's not a book. It could be that their pictures are not there, or they could be incomplete or completely wrong. Some children have trouble following the story, so the story just literally does not make sense to them. If I had trouble following directions, I would have a hard time getting places. If you can't follow the story sequence, you're not going to be able to get the big picture of the story. Some kids say that they have trouble sounding out the words, and by the time they sound out the word, they forget the entire rest of the sentence because they had to work so hard on figuring out this one word. So that's where that 5-finger rule kind of comes into play too, is if that's happening a lot and your kid can't even remember the next sentence or the sentence before, you probably need to back up so that their comprehension can keep up with their fluency. And then, you told me to read, but then you got mad when I read something easy that was fun for me. Reading is reading. If it's fun for them, it's totally okay. It doesn't matter if it's a comic book. Comic books have words, graphic novels have words, and they're still putting together the sequence. We just need to help them build the word-picture relationship so that they're understanding the full picture of what's happening in the story.
Okay, so we're going to talk about some ways to help our readers that are struggling. Okay, so a lot of kids have difficulty with decoding, and when they have trouble with decoding, this is going to build and make it more difficult for comprehension and for fluency. So a lot of times we will look at the decoding first to see how that is. Okay, so if the child has trouble sounding out words, there are some strategies we can use with parents to help with that. So we often will tell parents to do shared reading. So slow down to a pace that the child can read along with you, and repeating shortly after you if it's longer words is fine. But this is one of the ways that research has told us to help improve reading decoding skills. We also talk about the hierarchy of cues for manipulating sounds. So if you're reading with your child and you know that there's a hard word coming that the child won't know, go ahead and give them some of the sounds. It might be appropriate to give them what the syllables are, or if they're having trouble, tell them the vowel sound is this. So we will look at what level of cues does a child need to be able to read this word. And if you can think about it that way, like, okay, they're struggling with the vowels, so let me tell them the vowel sound. And then ideally, that will help them be able to read more independently. Multisensory is very important for kids that struggle with sounding out words. So we use a lot of multisensory cues working with kids.
So here is a list of instructions for how we do some of our graphic sight words.
Yeah, so for sight words, we want to make it concrete for the child because if they're having trouble sounding out the words, and especially if the rules do not apply with the sight words, we need to find a way to have it be more concrete for the child. So we'll talk to parents about writing out each word that's difficult. On one side of an index card, write the word plain, and then on the other side, you can have graphics. So here's just a couple of examples. Okay, so for the word buy, like I'm going to buy something. So on the other side, we have the little feet because these two vowels are walking together, and then there's the IE there. So they know from the vowel chart that's going to say I. And then there's some little money there, so they can kind of connect that. One more quick example, the word they. And then on the other side, we have our little A for the vowel sound, and then there's a picture of two children. So they can connect that as two or more people, and then the U.S. is going to say the A sound. And this is also applicable for older students. Sometimes for our older students, we'll make cue cards for stories. So you can see that there are cues for the more difficult words that are in the story. Sometimes we'll let children draw a picture that goes along with that. Sometimes it's helpful for us to highlight the vowels. So for some of our kids, sometimes we'll do that as well. Okay. And some other ways to help kids, we don't want them to get overwhelmed. So if you can put it in shorter chunks, take turns as you're going, that will help. Working on sight words at the reading level will also help. Okay, so when the problem is with comprehension, again, we like to encourage parents to do shared reading, especially if it's reading for fun. Questioning for imagery is really important. So instead of saying, what does that mean? Say, what did that make you picture? And if that's difficult, what did this sentence make you picture? What do these characters make you picture? Question for imagery. We like to have our kids make character cards, or you can copy character cards from the story. They can make a setting, and they can move the characters around as they're reading the story and as they're summarizing. Breaking it up into small chunks is also important for comprehension. And then giving them a structure so they can understand and know what's expected. So for the main idea, for kindergarten through high school, who did what happened? Give them a simple structure to follow. Okay, so reading fluency, at the top we have our little equation. So reading fluency equals rate plus accuracy. So how quickly can they read and how accurately can they read? So sometimes we have kids that are very proud of their ability to read quickly. Yes, and we have to remind them to read at the pace that their brain makes pictures. And that means that maybe they have to slow down significantly, but that's okay because it's not a race. It's not about who can read the fastest. It's really about how can we understand what we're reading. Okay, so for kids that have fluency issues that lags behind, we like to do a lot of air tracing with them, have them visualize the words. We can have decks of the hard words, have them do air tracing and spelling. Okay, and also giving them some structure will help. And the one thing that we really need to remember is that the harder it is for them to decode, the more difficult it is for them to comprehend. Even our kids that are really good guessers. Yeah. Okay, so then some of the other things we would also do for comprehension, like asking the questions, talking through higher order thinking skills, that will help them as well.
All right, so how can you tell if your kid is struggling with reading fluency or reading comprehension? There are a couple of telltale signs. So for reading fluency, your child will probably have trouble decoding words. They'll probably have trouble sounding them out, blending the sounds back together, creating new words with sounds that are in those words. And they might guess at words based on a single sound. So they might know the vowel, and they're like, oh, it's box, even though there's no B and no X. But they know the O, and it makes an ah sound, so it's a box. And then for reading comprehension, a lot of these kids will use the pictures to figure out and retell the story. So if you take those pictures away, they really lose that ability to be able to tell you what happened in the story and in what order it happened. They might tell you some of the pieces, they might miss some of the main details, they might even miss the big picture of the story. And you can tell by asking them questions like, what happened at the beginning? What happened after that? What happened at the end? And they'll probably try and flip through the book to find the picture that answers the question that you're asking. But if you take away all of that, they're really going to struggle, and it's going to be really hard for them, and it's going to really increase their frustration. So, let's encourage future successful readers. They may not be successful now, but they will be in the future, as long as we keep working with them. The rule number 1, read with them. Always, always, all the time, everywhere, any chance you get. It makes a huge difference. Just exposure to reading makes a huge difference in children's reading ability. Provide lots of materials and lots of opportunities to practice reading. Hey, look, can you read that sign? I bet you know what it is, though. And you can coordinate the big yellow arch with the word McDonald's, and eventually they'll learn to sound out. Oh, there's a C next to that M. That makes Mac. And you can go from there. Let them see you get excited about reading. Excitement is contagious, so pass it on. If you get excited, yes, the new book in my series is coming out. I can't wait, I can't wait, I can't wait. Or, oh, the new movie's coming out that's about my book. Oh, I want to see it. I want to see how it's different from the book. It's a great time to talk about how the book and the movie are different and why they might be different. Talk about your own personal reading and what you liked to read when you were their age. A lot of kids don't put together that their parents used to be children. And if you tell them, hey, when I was 9, I used to like to read this book, they will be completely surprised most of the time. And they will probably really like that idea, and they may even investigate some new things that they weren't interested in before just because mom or dad said that it was cool. Reading really is an adventure that continues as long as you follow the pages. As long as you keep reading, you can keep learning about new worlds, you can go deep inside your imagination into things that are completely unreal, and you can learn all you've ever wanted to know about the universe. It just depends on what you're interested in. So here's some next steps if you still have concerns. One of the main things that I always encourage parents to do is to work as a team with their child's teachers. It's so important. They see your kid for a third of the day. And so you really need to work as a team with them. Have open dialogue. Be honest with them. They can't help you if they don't know that if they don't know that you're having concerns. And be willing to accept some suggestions from them and maybe offer some suggestions. You are both working for the success of your child. Work together. A lot of parents don't know that you have the right to ask to have your child evaluated for special education services in your local school district, whether or not they attend a local public school. Homeschool, private school, doesn't matter. If you live in that district, you have this right. As part of IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, the federal government actually mandates that every child has the right to a free and appropriate public education, regardless of whether or not their family chooses to enroll them in a public school. That is a right that never disappears as long as they are school age. What that means is that if your child is struggling, your first step is to make sure the district is aware that you have concerns and that you would like the school to address them. From there, they will contact you about scheduling, getting some information, possibly scheduling an evaluation to see what your areas of concern are and what can be done about it. And then at times, a comprehensive language evaluation done by a speech-language pathologist is going to be helpful to find out if there's possibly a language disorder that could be impeding their reading and writing literacy progress. And it should be noted that if you get services here, that doesn't mean you can't get services here either. Actually, you can get both. Even if you have outside insurance, if you have Medicaid, it doesn't matter. This is federally mandated, this is completely different, and they feed off each other in that you can double dip in services. They're not mutually exclusive. So a lot of people think that, oh, if my kid's getting services in school, that I can't do anything else for them, which is just not true. And a lot of kids, if they do get services in both places, make faster progress because they're able to generalize their skills a little better because they're working with different people on those skills, they're using them in different environments. It gives them a lot of leeway in how they can use their skills, and just that flexibility helps the skills to develop. So, if you need some resources, check out your local library, much like this one, which is fabulous, and has lots and lots of floors and lots and lots of books. I love it. Some of the resources that we use to make worksheets for when we're working on stories with our kids are listed there. And then you guys are always welcome to follow us on social media. We've just started a Pinterest page that's gonna have lots of fun stuff. And then we post events and things to Facebook and Twitter. Any questions? Thanks for coming. Oh yeah, we have some staff picks. So Miss McKenna likes to read audiobooks. She's one of our therapists. She loves audiobooks. She pops them in her car, listens to them on the way to work. I like hardcover books. I like the smell. I like the feel. I just like the tactile, having it in my hands. Janie, our receptionist, likes books that she can read to her little one. And Cliff likes classic literature, and Rachel likes motivational and inspirational books and audiobooks. So we're all kind of a mismatch of everything. But that's the best part, because then we can talk about, oh, I like this because of this. And we can get each other interested in different things. And it's okay to like different things. We're all different people. It's kind of our own little personalities showing through. Yay, thank you for coming. And we have some feedback forms that'll go around.
Very good.
Thank you, Rick.
Questions? Anybody?